This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
1,
2,
3,
4.
Monster movie.
Fun time, go! Monster movie.
Fun time, go. Monster
Movie.
fun time.
Go!
Monster movie. Fun time, go.
With Precious D and Honeybee.
Fun time, go!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and neighbors, welcome to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. 31 Days of the Dead. Day 21. I am your host, Precious D, and with me today is my old friend, Caleb Mendez. Welcome back to the show, Caleb.
Thanks for having me.
This is our fourth year doing this. You've been here every year.
Yeah, fourth year. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, 4 years. Goodness.
Yeah. Are you up to anything lately you want to plug? You had a book of poetry come out last year. I know you're always working on your art.
Yeah, had that book come out last year. I've got another one in the works that's all done, just a button press away from publishing, but I'm kind of holding myself out on that one. And then, yeah, just a whole bunch of other art stuff. Caleb Mendez Art on Instagram is where you can really keep up with me. It's where I post everything that I'm doing. Other than that, just enjoying my time.
And we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And, of course, on our website, mmftg.com, there's usually a guest page for each of our guests with the links to all of their things. So today we're doing our 31 Days of the Dead, and Caleb and I are going to talk about #Alive, which is on Netflix, and it's a Korean one. These Korean ones are sometimes brutal. This one's not nearly as brutal as Train to Busan, but it's got a little more uplifting ending. But this one's a little weird in that it came out in 2020. It seems like it's a metaphor for COVID, but it's not. It's too early to be a metaphor for COVID. It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, just right before COVID, but comes out during, and it definitely feels inspired by the pandemic, which, I mean, maybe that's just a theme amongst, sort of zombie movies in general, where it's like, oh, this pandemic sort of happens, and now you have to deal with the isolation of all of that.
Yeah. I think it may have been intended to be about the isolation in Gen Z, I guess, of interacting with people online all the time instead of in person and stuff like that. Because our lead is a video game streamer. Oh, but the other weird thing about this movie is that it is based on a script, a 2019 script called Alone by Matt Naylor, which became another film. Neither of these movies are a remake. They're not neither of them is a remake of the other one. It's just, for whatever reason, Matt decided to work on a Koreanized version of the script with Cho Il, and then whoever just took the original script and went away and made an American version that also came out in 2020. But also, when I was looking this up again, there's another unrelated movie also called Alone that came out in 2020, which is on Netflix.
Goodness.
And apparently also on Hulu and Prime. But the other one, the Alone that is about zombies, that's a version of this script, is on Tubi and Pluto. I still haven't watched that one. And the not zombie Alone is also a horror movie. It's just not about zombies.
How wild.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one
the more you know.
apparently, yeah. That one is about a
Bum.
woman like escaping from a cabin in the woods from some guy that wants to kill her. I think it starts with that. And then she's like in the woods dealing with that shit while the guy's still chasing her. I just, read the synopsis on Google. But now I got to watch that one too.
Yeah. Vastly different movies. Okay. Interesting.
Yes. Right. But still horror. Because being alone is horror. Being alone is scary. So it's dangerous to go alone. So take this with you.
Yeah. Take this. How
so,
funny.
Our cast. So it was directed, this version that we're talking about, #Alive, was directed by Cho Il-hung, who worked on the screenplay. And it's 99 minutes from South Korea. And the box office was 14.7 million in US dollars, but Wikipedia is not telling me what the budget was, so I don't know if that was good or not. And the cast is kind of small. I mean, there's a whole bunch of unlisted extras that were zombies, but
yeah.
Our main cast is Yoo Ah-in as Jun-woo, the gamer. Park Shin-hye as Kim Yoo-bin. She lives in a female tenant of his apartment building who helps him survive. Damn it, I didn't turn my ding-dongs off on my phone. Hold on, notifications. Turn down notifications.
Just some spooky, some ominous music to accompany.
Yeah. Well, I'll cut that part out. Okay. Jun Bae-soo as a masked man who saves Jun-woo and Yoo-bin but wants to feed them to his zombified wife.
Oh.
Lee Hoon-wook as Lee Sang-chul, the infected tenant whom Jun-woo lets in. That's at the beginning of the outbreak.
Yep.
Hae Won as the policewoman who's turned into a zombie by the infected. That was sad.
Yeah.
Jin So-yoon as Elena Kim. I don't know who the hell that was. Do you remember who Elena Kim was?
I can't say that I do.
And Lee Chae-kyung as the zombified wife of the masked man.
There we go. Okay.
So there's our cast. Caleb, did you watch this in English or Korean?
So I watched it with a friend, and we watched it in English, which is unfortunate because I would have preferred to watch it in Korean.
Yeah.
But this friend of mine did not want to do that, and that's whatever.
I usually prefer to watch it in the native language, whatever that may be. But if I have to take notes for the show, it's hard to do when you're trying to read it at the same time. So I kind of switch back and forth a little bit sometimes I just want to hear what the original guy sounds like. And sometimes they don't get very close at all.
No, yeah.
Like the dub person will have a much higher pitched voice than the original person or things like that.
Yeah, I have a hard time just watching the dubbed lips not matching up with what is being said. And that's just a personal issue.
Right. It's not that bugs me so much as just the voice itself not quite fitting. And then often when you switch, you're like, oh, they sound completely different.
Yeah, that's not the same at all. No, I get that.
Yeah. So, I used to watch a lot of Jackie Chan movies, and once he got famous over here, he started dubbing his own movies instead of letting someone else dub them, so that you do actually get, even though the lips don't quite match, you still get Jackie Chan's voice coming out of his face. So it just works better.
It still is him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you think of #Alive?
Man, I did not love this movie. I was actually a little bit bored with it, which, I mean, maybe I went in expecting a little too much. Maybe I was really expecting a more like action-packed thing instead of a very humanistic kind of story.
Yeah.
So it wasn't what I expected, and I think because of that I felt let down, but that's my fault for having expectations on something that I know nothing about.
I've always wanted to pick up a book that like didn't have a cover or didn't have its dust jacket or something, and just start reading it with no idea of what kind of book I was reading.
Yeah, just
And
going
just
completely
let
blind.
it. Yeah, I don't know if it's a mystery. I don't know if it's a romance. Just nothing about it. So someday I'll arrange for that to happen. I quite liked it. So, folks, it's we're not going to go through the whole plot, but this there's a zombie outbreak that happens at the beginning of the movie. I don't think they ever really tell us why.
No.
And there's this guy. There's a young guy living by himself in an apartment. He streams himself playing video games. I think he's making his living at it. But he's living by himself. He's not with his family when the zombie outbreak happens. And he's in this rather large apartment building. So that means there's a lot of people nearby getting turned into zombies. And he manages, in fact, one of them starts turning, he lets a guy in who's being attacked reluctantly. And the guy starts turning right in front of him. So he ends up isolated in his apartment and unable to leave, as we said, very similar to a COVID kind of situation, but coincidentally not on purpose, and can't leave. There's just too many zombies around for him to try to leave his apartment. And he is, as long as the power holds out, which do they ever lose power completely?
So the power never goes out, but they lose service and internet, although like the radio still works, and that goes into play later in the movie with like his phone being used for as a radio.
Yeah, I found that
jack.
part funny. Yeah, so he's isolated. He can't resupply. He can't get out. He can't really communicate with his family. I think he gets a voicemail at one point.
Yes.
And at some point, a couple of days into things, he realizes there's somebody else alive across the way from him in the same, it's one of those big apartment complexes that has, different wings. So there's a woman across from him, but there's a whole courtyard between them. So she's maybe like 100 yards or so away, and they start communicating at a distance and eventually decide they've got to try to meet up and do something about this situation. They're beginning to run out of food.
Yeah, for a little bit, whenever they start connecting and speaking with each other, it kind of turns into a little meet cute almost of him trying to no longer want to be around in the apocalypse and her saving his life, and then they kind of walkie-talkie communicate to each other, and it's this sort of meet cute situation.
He has a drone that he uses to do a little bit of ferrying things back and forth, and at one point he is overcome with despair and tries to kill himself, and that's when she's been watching him. He didn't realize that she was over there because she's also she's trying to stay safe. She's isolated in her apartment, and she starts flashing a light at him or something to tell him not to do it.
Yeah, a little laser pointer.
As he's already hanging from, of course he hasn't done it right. Trigger warning, folks. We're going to be talking about attempted suicide right now. I don't want to describe how to do it properly. Hanging is meant to snap your neck and be a quick and painless way to execute someone or yourself. But if you do it wrong, you just end up strangling and dangling and kicking around, and which is what he does. But fortunately, though, because then he's able to pull himself free. And she also, we see that she is also she has actually made a noose herself and strung it up, but hasn't used it. So she has had the same idea. But they sort of kind of start having a romance, but when they get to, I guess they never really have time. I'm just going to assume that at some point after the end of the movie, they at least tried to have a kiss and see if it was going to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I think it's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard to have a romantic moment when you meet each other on, ground zero of a zombie outbreak where they're all just trying to get to you. So,
yeah. So at one point when things are, you mentioned this before, so I wanted to go back to this, the radio. Folks, if you don't know this, ladies and gentlemen, you can use your phone as an FM radio, but you need an antenna. It won't just do it by itself. And the way you make an antenna is by plugging in some headphones that have a cord, and the cord will act as the antenna. And he doesn't have any. All of his are Bluetooth.
Yep.
But at one point when he ventures out of his apartment to try and get some supplies from another apartment, he does manage to find some corded headphones. But then he does this weird thing where he just snips them off and then puts it on speaker. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That's not going to make a long enough antenna. The longer your antenna is, the better reception you're going to get. And he seems to think that he just needs to have something plugged in. So he cuts off the end of it. So there's just a minimum. It works, I guess, but I'm certainly not going to test that out.
Yeah, no, it's
myself.
just a little bit of suspension of disbelief, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ruin a pair of corded headphones just in case I do need to use my phone as an FM radio.
Yep.
So,
yeah, real goofy.
The lesson is, folks, that sometimes it's a good idea to have some outdated technology around just in case. It's good to actually have a radio somewhere in the house because you never know.
Yep.
You just never know. Actually, a few years ago, we lost power for part of the day, and I put some batteries in the radio, and we went out on the front porch because it was too hot to stay in the house because we didn't have any air conditioning. I think that's why the power went out. The grid had been overwhelmed. Thanks, Governor Abbott. The grid had been overwhelmed by the air conditioner use, and it was good that I had an old-fashioned radio with some batteries.
Yeah, no, that old technology really comes in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
even better, you gotta
radio,
have one of those crank ones.
How funny.
Another movie, I think it's 28 Days Later, 28 Days Later, one of the characters has an emergency radio that doesn't need batteries and electricity. You can crank it up to give it a charge.
Yeah, one of those cranks also come with like a flashlight as well.
Called a what?
Maybe I'm thinking of. There was also one. I had one growing up as a kid, or my parents did. That was both a radio and it had a flashlight too.
Yes.
To crank up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had just flashlights that do that, where you squeeze it.
Yeah. How funny.
I think it's a Faraday thing. Something Faraday invented, or based on Faraday's principles. Anyway, I wanted to mention the policewoman too, because she's in the credits here. So early on, he just seems very not interested in participating. Like, he doesn't want to let that other guy in his house. He seems very shut off from the rest of society and doesn't seem interested in helping or communicating or anything. But at one point, he's looking out his window and sees this policewoman who's not a zombie yet trying to fight off the zombies, and they start overwhelming her, and this upsets him, and he starts just yelling at the zombies because he can't do anything to help, and he's so upset that he can't help, and just so seems really angry at the unfairness of the situation, how they're kind of ganging up on her.
Yeah.
And just starts yelling at them. So this is the first time we see him kind of caring about something that's happening to somebody else. So I think that is, maybe it's part of why you didn't like it that much, is that he doesn't seem terribly likable in the beginning. And there is a lot of time spent with where we're just with him before the other woman comes in. The other person, I mean, who is a woman. And we see him being kind of a not very interesting, a little bit of a jerk. Though there is some stuff about his family and his father telling him, his father leaves a message telling him, "You must survive." And so he starts the hashtag "I must survive." So he's when he can still communicate.
Yeah, it's like an online thing that kind of carries. I think, like, right at the end of the movie, we see that any survivor of the apocalypse was like making posts on their social medias with the hashtag "I must survive." and you kind of see that it's like this thing that's happening, which, I mean, he does like, I think every day, like he makes a little video for whatever social media following of his is alive. And he's like, hey, just a quick update. I'm alive. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Right. I thought that part was hilarious, but I think he was just kind of saying it out of habit, I think, because that's just what he says, because it was just so ludicrous at that point to tell anyone to like and subscribe. But it's unclear how big of a following he has, because it could be huge. Some of those people have thousands and even millions of followers. He might be huge. They're not clear. It's not clear, but he's probably at least paying for this apartment with it, because we don't see any indication of any other job that he's got.
No, but
so
he is a bit incompetent in terms of, keeping his fridge stocked.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're a professional like Twitch streamer or whatever the equivalent in Korea is, it's probably still Twitch. I don't know. You need some Mountain Dew and some chips.
And alcohol as well.
Yes. Yeah. So, single guy living alone, so he hasn't kept his fridge stocked, which, again, folks, you never know when the zombie apocalypse. I'm not trying to turn my audience into a bunch of preppers, but maybe have something in your... Yeah, so far I've told you to go out and get a radio that doesn't need power. Now I'm telling you to stockpile food.
Go get a crank radio. Yep, go make sure your fridge is full. Yep, it's non-perishables. Just keep them on hand.
Some meals ready to eat. And I mentioned this in another episode, but remember, blades don't need reloading and clubs don't need sharpening. So just very important to remember in any apocalypse, really, but particularly a zombie apocalypse. Good. Thank you very much. So, the other interesting part of this movie, as we implied reading the cast, that at one point they've decided to get together and meet up and try and get somewhere, and they're getting attacked and they get rescued by this guy who brings them into his apartment and gives them something to eat and something to drink, and it acts like he's being very nice, but it turns out he's actually drugging them because his wife is a zombie and he's feeding them to his wife. He's already done this with other people and now he plans to do it with them. So, and that's, I think, pretty much the last thing that happens before they get rescued, because they managed to extract themselves from that situation and get up on the roof. And just when it looks like they're not going to make it, a helicopter comes and mows down the zombie horde and rescues them.
Yeah,
because
it comes to just very last minute thing.
Yeah, and I think it was because they had been tweeting out or whatever that they were alive there. They were going around looking for survivors.
Yeah, they just happened to stumble upon these two.
Yeah. So it does seem like that in the world of this movie, this is more of a zombie outbreak than a zombie apocalypse, that they maybe are going to get it contained because people are getting rescued. And so that at the very end, he changes his hashtag to from hashtag I must survive to hashtag alive. And that's where we get our title. They save the title for the very end.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem like the government does have things not under control, but they're getting things under control and beginning a rescue operation. Of course, unless there's a sequel, we won't know for sure if this is just a temporary lull. And did they ever? I don't think they ever gave us any indication of what was causing the outbreak.
No, it just sort of happened.
Yeah, I believe they're basically virus zombies. I can't remember now. Are they actually dead and come back to life, or they just catch a virus that makes them rage-filled, mindless, monsters?
I think it's the virus one.
Yeah,
where,
because if they're really dead, if they're really actually undead, then feeding his wife probably wouldn't do any good. But if they're just, the virus has made them mindless chomping machines, then yeah, feeding her will keep her alive, but it's not gonna make her stop acting like a zombie.
No, yeah, it's just you're preserving your zombie wife
Yeah.
for whatever reason, love or what have you.
Yeah. He can't accept the situation. And the thing is, if it is a virus, there could potentially be a cure if they haven't actually died. But that doesn't make it okay to kill people.
You know, I can't imagine turning into a virus zombie and then having a cure and then being healed and going, wow, I really ate like 4 people.
Yeah. Hopefully, because I think usually with the virus zombie situation, there's some kind of, brain swelling or whatever. Hopefully you won't remember what happened when you were a zombie.
Your digestive system will.
Well, I mean, it tastes like pork, apparently. I wouldn't know myself, but reports.
No. Yeah, just a little light
historical. Human flesh and pig flesh are of similar consistency and taste. Okay. I went down a dark path. But yeah, as I've been watching all these movies, I've realized that, and I've mentioned this before, in movies, zombies are defined by their behavior, not by their origin or physiology. Things tend to get labeled as zombies if they act like zombies, regardless of whether they've actually died and come back to life or not. As long as they're acting like zombies, we will call them zombies. So they're zombies. They're zombies. If it looks like a zombie and acts like a zombie and quacks like a zombie, then it's a zombie.
Probably a zombie.
Yeah. All right, Caleb, we're using a 1 to 5 brains scale this year. So how many brains are you going to rate #alive?
All right. So I've actually come around a little bit to this, not by much. I realized that my expectations for something I knew nothing about kind of set me up for failure. So I'm going to give it a decent 3 brains out of 5 brains.
Okay. All right.
So yeah,
I'm
3 out of 5 brains.
I liked it. Okay. I'm giving it a 4.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah.
I liked it. Caleb says it was okay. I say I liked it. So there you go, folks.
There you go.
As we said, it's on Netflix. When I have time, I'm going to check out those other versions. I mean, the other version and the other unrelated movie that has the same title.
Yeah, Alone, the zombie movie, and then Alone, the lady in the cabin in the woods movie.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Caleb Mendez, for joining me once again.
Thanks for having me.
I'll
It's
talk
always
to you
a pleasure.
next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to hang out more than once a year.
I agree.
Right. Let's folks, our comic shop closed down where we met. So
Yeah,
there's just not
been
a place to hang out like that anymore.
Nope.
But we'll make it happen.
Mhm.
All right, folks. Caleb, thanks for joining me, and listeners, thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe, rate, review us. You can find links to everything at mmftg.com. Until next time, I've been Precious D. With me has been Caleb Mendez. Remember to keep calm and take shelter in basements, and to buy a crank radio and some meals ready to eat. Please don't misuse science. We won't see you, but you will hear us next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go. You've been listening to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. If you enjoyed the show, please consider rating and reviewing us on your podcasting platform of choice. You can leave us a message and find links to all our things at mmftg.com.